All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Miguel Joey Aviles, and I am a global diversity and inclusion thought leader, consultant, and coach. And I want to welcome you to LULAC's Latino Leaders, the Past, the Present, and the Future Spotlight for Hispanic Heritage Month. Today, I have the pleasure to have a conversation with Honorable Nellie Gorbea, Secretary of State of Rhode Island. Secretary Gorbea made history when she was sworn in on January 6, 2015, becoming the first Hispanic elected to statewide office in New England. Secretary Gorbea believes government should work for the people, and as Secretary of State, she has promoted increased civic engagement and government accessibility. Secretary Gorbea, thank you so much for being here with us, and I look forward to an amazing conversation with you.
Same here, Miguel. Hi.
Absolutely. So the first question that I have for you, Secretary, is tell us more about yourself, your career, and who you are.
Well, I am Nellie Gorbea, and I grew up in San Juan, Puerto Rico, all the way through high school, and then came over to the mainland to get a public policy degree over at Princeton University. I'm someone who has always been interested in community problem solving and discovered that public policy and public administration was a great way to do that. Later on, I got a master's degree in public administration from Columbia University, and eventually found my way over here to Rhode Island about 30 years ago. And this has been a wonderful experience to be a part of Rhode Island, because Rhode Island is a community that has a variety of different groups that have settled here. And 7 years ago, they honored me with this position, electing me to this Secretary of State of Rhode Island. And it's been a joy. It's been a joy to be able to show that Latinos can be leaders and that we can bring together people in a way that hasn't happened before.
Latinos can be leaders. That's powerful, and what a journey. And what I would like to know is what motivated you to go into this field?
So, it's funny. I was that little girl in 7th grade in Puerto Rico who, when they described what student council was, did raise her hand and said, yeah, no, that sounds like something I'd like to do. And ran for office back then every single year and served on the student council. So you could say that it was somehow in my bones, although like many girls and many women later on in life, I kind of forgot about that and thought, no, I just want to do the work. And like many women, it took me a long time to realize that no, after helping and after being sort of the person behind the scenes, I wanted to go forward. And it took a lot of people asking me, when are you going to run, to finally do it? And what I've discovered is the real joy of being the leader at the table, because when you're the one leading the efforts, you can design how that happens. And so we can have a government that's representative of community ideas and solutions. And our best public policy solutions come when there's a diversity of perspective, opinions, and backgrounds around the policymaking table. So I come into this, I tell young people, the best job is the one that you love to do, because it almost feels like you're on vacation every day. Well, some days are tough. I'm not going to deny that, but it's been a joy to be able to say, you know what, we need to run elections differently. We need to make it easy for business people who want to get their business off the ground. We need to make it easier for them too, and to work with the staff to bring that about. So, and in particular with democracy, people have a lot of demands on their times, and democracy is really complicated. And for me, American democracy, the promise of American democracy is that if you get involved, you can actually make a difference. And I know that seems hard sometimes. You don't always win, but you have to be engaged. And so I have spent the last 30 years trying to explain how to get engaged to people and asking them to join with me to change the world around them.
You mentioned that it's not always as easy, and I wonder, as a Latina, What were some of the challenges you faced before becoming the Secretary of State for Rhode Island?
Well, first and foremost, when I first moved here, I was a faculty spouse. I had joined my husband here, and I didn't really know anyone other than some of the other faculty members at the University of Rhode Island. So my social networks were all back in Puerto Rico. I had to create those from scratch. And I didn't have young kids early on. And so I did it by signing up to work on a board or a commission. And then later on nonprofit boards. And I want to call that out because it is a great way to get to know people. So I joined the Governor's Advisory Commission on Hispanic Affairs, and the people that I met there are still some of my best friends. And it was a very diverse group of Latinos. And so that was a really great way to sort of get over the blues of like, I'm new here and I don't really know anyone. And so I reach out, I really encourage people, particularly young people, to reach outside of your own circles. Even if you are from a community, reach out and join groups where you're going to meet new people so that you can expand your networks and be able to get ahead.
You know, from not having a community and getting to a new place and creating that sense of community, how did you feel when you became the first Hispanic elected to a statewide office in New England?
Well, it is definitely a joy to win. I will say that. El fiestón fue grande. Actually, my inauguration party was actually the best. Tenemos plenero, quedó buenísimo. We had people from other parties come to this party. But beyond that, first thing, I mean, it was really wonderful. And it made me proud to be a Rhode Islander. You know, that this is a state that embraced someone like me who wasn't born in the state, someone who was ethnically perhaps different, and recognized that we do have similarities. And I worked with people in the Italian American community, the Portuguese, the Cape Verdeans, the French Canadians, all of these different groups. We all worked together to make this campaign happen back in 2014 and have continued that into my term in office. And so, yeah, it was really wonderful to see that in my home state. The other time when it felt really, really special is when I got to go on reading week to classrooms, particularly those classrooms that had significant numbers of Black and Latino children, and to have them identify with someone who is now reading to them. And that was something that I hadn't really thought about much when I was running for office. I was running for office because, that's, what I knew I could do, and I could do it well. But to see, particularly young kids sort of straighten up and say, I have an aunt from Puerto Rico, or I have a relative who's, Hispanic, and feel that pride and see them was really, I think, one of the most amazing, wonderful joys of my time in office. And so, we have a history here in Rhode Island of being on the leading edge of inclusiveness. We were the birthplace of freedom of religion, separation of church and state. It hasn't always been perfect, but we have struggled through and found some good moments as well. And so Rhode Island has had a real big impact on the fabric of our country. I'm hoping it will do it again in the future as I launched my candidacy for governor of the state in next year's elections. But the time as secretary has been an absolute joy.
Being the first comes with a set of joys and challenges. And as a Latina, I would love to know, how has your Latinidad impacted how you think or advancing your career? Particularly, how does it impact the decisions you make on a day-to-day basis?
Bueno, mi latinidad is definitely who I am. And so I think that in part, growing up in Puerto Rico and coming with this bicultural, bilingual perspective, I think the biggest thing is that it gives me a sense of the other, of the perspective of being an outsider. And so I I look for opportunities to make sure that the way we are communicating with the public in government is one that brings people in, that makes them feel a part of things, not to be treated as the other. It creates a sense of empathy, right? For those who are, having a difficult time accessing their government, which is really complicated. It's one of the first things I did when I came in was to say, okay, all of these forms for incorporating businesses, we need to, let's first ask the question, do we really need them? And if we do, then fine. But if we don't, let's streamline processes. And then let's put those forms in plain English that are in a way that's accessible to people, that looks nice. There's no reason why somebody who's really excited about starting a business, who doesn't necessarily have a brother or a cousin who's a lawyer or a CPA, should come to a government website and go like, oh, I don't know, I can't do this. No, it should be a feeling of si se puede, ¿verdad? So we simplified things to a point where I get all the time, not just from Latinos, but from any small business person, I love your website. It's so easy to navigate. And I say that ease, that perspective comes from my Latinidad, from having that perspective of being sort of outside the mainstream. The last thing that I'll say about my Latinidad is that it's where I seek strength and refueling. And it's in my culture, in my familia, in my faith. And all of that is deeply tied to Latinidad. And so, that's how I've really used it as a way of strength and refueling in the path.
And keeping in line with that strength and the spirit of si se puede, as a Latina and as a woman taking on some of the toughest issues and I must say, getting results, what has allowed you to continue flourishing and serving the people of Rhode Island?
Well, I'll say that first and foremost, when you work really, really hard and then you go out on the street and have random regular folks in the grocery store tell you, whether it's at Bodega or it's at Whole Foods, either one, have people come up and say, well, thank you for the work you're doing. Eso es lo mejor que hay como un servidor público, definitivamente. So, and I say that, the approach that I've taken as a leader is one of inclusiveness, right? And if there was ever a reason why it matters for those of us who have this ability to get engaged, that's it, is that you can actually change things for the better for people. And it turns out that if you ask people for their opinions and include them, they tend to work with you on issues. Whether you're at the local, state, or federal government, having a diversity of voices in the room is really important in terms of developing the best policies. I've used that philosophy in my management, my leadership, all throughout my career, both in my private sector roles, my public sector roles, and in the community. And it's not just about, racial diversity. And I think that that's a really important thing. We also have to think about, how can we bring people with a diversity of perspectives into the conversation and to help you think about how to do things differently. It's one of the biggest challenges I think that our country faces right now. And I'm glad that I grew up in Puerto Rico, which, is a multilingual, multicultural place where you do have a diversity of races, ethnicities, and also very strong political opinions. And I think that I've been able to channel that civility to some extent that we can bring, because we're all part of the same family, bring it into a larger context now in Rhode Island state government. And it has helped me connect with others as well.
In connecting with others includes other generations, like you said, different ethnicities and race, etc. But the last question I would love to dedicate to that new generation, to those emerging leaders that are following on your steps. And what advice will you give to emerging leaders who are following your steps and seeking to bring positive change?
So first and foremost, do it. Get involved early. Yo le digo a mi gente joven, es súper importante. You guys, You all have really important ways in which you can contribute. But you also have to, it's not just about sort of jumping in, it's also about being a part of something bigger than yourself. And so join the boards of nonprofits, public sector boards. Don't be afraid to just literally call up. I've done that plenty of times as a young person. Those of us who are older, I will always make time for a young person who wants to get involved. And that was the case when I was young. I would literally call people up or send them the equivalent of an email, a letter, and say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing as an organization. Can I have lunch with you? Can I have a coffee with you? That you would be surprised at how many people will actually sit down with you and give you some time and perspective. And through that, you're able to say, hey, I'd like to participate. I will always be grateful to Aspira of New Jersey and to the Mercer County Hispanic Association, because those were some of the first nonprofit boards that I served on right after college, like literally right after college. And they gave me, sort of space in which to start developing my leadership skills that I used, my entire life. So, and then once you're in there, my other big, sort of lesson learned or thing that I hope you'll do is to bring along others with you. Don't forget to hold the door open, as our vice president said. Don't just be the only one at the table. And then finally, don't be afraid of doing the work. Just helping out, saying, I think I can help with this, and being a part of things. Pero desde bien joven podemos hacer mucho.
Secretary Gorbea, muchísimas gracias for investing your time with us and for sharing your story and your wisdom. So this is your opportunity to close this interview with a call of action or any last thoughts.
Bueno, so my call to action to all of you is, look, I know that there's a lot of energy spent on national races, but it is so important for Latinos to get involved at the state and local government as well. Yes, running for office, and I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants some advice on that, but also boards and commissions of the state. So many big decisions are made that affect our everyday lives on school committees, parks and recreation committees, or zoning boards, planning boards, county commissions, things like that. So get involved in that and have a say in how things are running in your community. Help explain how things are running to others in your familia and your community, because American democracy is amazing. It's also pretty complicated sometimes. And so we need people to be bridges to our own community and help them explain and make them see that there is a way to make change happen. And then my other piece is, of course, never be afraid to ask for help or advice. Nobody's born knowing, and so I'm here to help you out in whatever way I can. There's wonderful organizations like LULAC, like NALEO, others, Unido, US. But don't be afraid to engage with others as a way to get to where you want to go. Nadie nace sabiendo, así es que we're all here for you. En la unión está la fuerza, definitivamente, como dice el dicho. And I'm looking forward to working with many of you to really change our country. We need every single one of you to be involved and to be engaged. And I thank LULAC for being that vehicle through which we can have this conversation and get things done and move our country in the right direction.
Secretary Gorbea, once again, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our audience. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us in LULAC's Latino Leaders, the past, the present, and the future Spotlight for Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you.